So I think where we're actually at now with the whole situation, well, the situation that everyone's talking about or kicking off about in protests, not just sort of migrants, just general, the big picture of where we're headed with society and culture, basically, globally and within England and America. So if we go back to around the time when this David Icke was on Terry Wogan, right, and he was sort of getting ridiculed, he was sort of like basically getting, sort of called the Joker or the Jester type character, like all this conspiracy theory business, right, they didn't actually really allow that. I want to talk about it on television. All these ideas that big corporate companies were making plans that the majority of the population weren't really aware of, even though, local councils openly had strategic planning and the public were pretty much pushed out of the situation when it comes to objections and consultations, so that, the council and big corporate entities ended up planning everything, and our say isn't being taken into consideration, right? Now, all the things that David Icke used to be not allowed to talk about, and they stopped him from talking about on the TV, are the type of things that Alex Jones now is talking about on his shows, and Russell Brand and Neil Oliver and Jimmy Dore and people like that, right? These sort of people here now. So they're all talking about these things now which weren't getting into the main TV because the main programs didn't want to talk about them. But the only problem with that is now that these things are getting talked about, and the whole population are thinking about them, and the whole population are talking about them, right? But that's actually not the main issue actually now. The fact that people are actually talking about these things widely, like many YouTube channels and many programs are talking about them, all these like wider plan strategies issues, BlackRock, Vanguard, the whole thing, all the things that David Icke sort of used to talk about. But that's actually not the problem now. Now that the population is aware of it, and the population is sort of what you call woken up to it, and the population is talking about it, right? What I found is that these people are kicking these things around now and chatting about them in all kinds of independent channels and independent videos and independent pages and videos. It's all these things are getting openly knocked about back and forth and talked about openly, right? But that's not what now needs to get talked about. It was kind of just like basically cracking the surface of it, basically, right? Because what actually needs to get talked about now is not actually getting even into the things that Jimmy Dore's talking about. It's not getting talked about by Neil Oliver. It's not getting talked about by Russell Brand. It's not getting talked about by Alex Jones. It's not getting talked about by David Icke or Gareth Icke. And that is actually getting into the technicalities, right, and the pure facts of the actual law itself, right, actual law, and these big companies and the government, right, and the things that this government have been doing and are doing now in Parliament and in businesses and in companies, that actually what they're doing is actually illegal and not lawful, right? And they've also made contradictions and mistakes in what they've been doing. And what are the consequences of that? Well, the consequences of that are that they're acting illegally and need to be prosecuted criminally, right? Just like the police, when it comes to prosecuting protesters, and the riot laws and the privileges of Parliament being violated, the Crown Prosecution Service and the police and MPs, Keir Starmer, and then there's loads of things that the government have been doing illegal and wrong, like putting the Attorney General in place when he's a member of the House of Lords, like the newspapers charging us VAT on adverts and keeping us out of the newspapers. Things like this. There are lots of things that the government actually have done illegally, like them using social media, right? And basically taking our channels and videos down and them being allowed to advertise their political campaigns on an American platform when it's getting interference and effect from overseas, like from foreign people and persons and foreign laws, right? All these things. So those are the things that aren't actually being said. And the reason that Ike and Alex Jones and Russell Brand and Neil Oliver and Jimmy Dore aren't talking about them is because they don't know them, right? And you can't really get them to know them because they're so now they're so engrossed and distracted with this kind of like thing that's happened, that all the things that David Icke, right, used to be talking about, right, weren't allowed to, but now they are. They're all kind of like wrapped up in talking about those things, right? They're all talking about those things, but you only really used to speak to the TV if you wrote into like, the BBC into like, points of view or complaints department at ITV or Channel 4. You write into them and, some department gets it and maybe it might get to an executive or whatever, the complaint or whatever, but you don't really get any help. No one really hears about it, right? Now, these people who are getting a lot of views or equal views to around, some of them are getting similar sort of views to what the nation is getting on mainstream TV, right? Or at least between all of them, they're getting around those views that mainstream TV were getting, maybe if you combine them all together, right? So that they're getting somewhere probably around the equal kind of like publicity, right? You can... you can break through the screen, you can break through the veneer, you can get into the comments and you can sort of start talking to other people a little bit and you might possibly be able to get to talk to them, but it's not easy because now, these people are actually talking to each other and they're talking to each other about all these issues and things between themselves, but we kind of like now... everyone's getting the message from these people, right? These people's messages are getting out rather than they weren't getting out. And these people also, besides getting the message out there, are actually talking to each other and having them on the shows. Now, some people don't really want to go on there. Like, I'm not too... That's my objective is not to be one of these people, right? My objective is just to get on with a normal life. But in order to do that, there is information that these people need to receive, right? But in order to help people, right? And in order to help each other, right? But not to help me, because like I just want to get back to normal life. Alex Jones says, I just want to go back into the woods in my log cabin like Johnny B. Good and, shoot some guns and do some hunting or whatever, right? That's what he says, right? He says, I want all this to go away. I don't want to be the hero or whatever, right? But the thing is that we can't really get through to these people because now they've got all these, they're getting swarmed by all these people, right, who suddenly now are interested in this whole thing. But it's not enough because being interested in this whole like big picture and game thing, all they're doing now is kind of like going over the same things while there's these new events sort of kicking off and going on. But there is some information, some pieces of information that if they would, like, if you could get their attention and get them to focus on it and concentrate, right, and if they could share it, the information, then it would actually help what they're trying to do and achieve actually a lot more. But they're not listening because they're so now getting on with their in a way, they've sort of... the thing is that they in order to kind of like, beat your opponent, you've got to kind of, in a way, step up to the podium with the opponent, and then you're a person on the podium opposite an opponent. Whereas if you don't, then, is there a way to defeat these political opponents without, becoming, a political opponent, if you know what I mean? But anyway, so it's awkward now. The information that needs to get out there and the information that needs to get known is actually, I think, now being more suppressed and blocked than these people were getting suppressed and blocked before this whole thing kicked off. Like David Icke, he's getting mocked by, Terry Wogan, right? The way that, David Icke's ideas and these conspiracy theories were getting suppressed, and, Alex Jones, Russell Brand, Neil Oliver, and Jimmy Dore type people, right, is actually how these facts and truths that need to be told are getting suppressed by the government. They won't even let you put them in a petition. And when they're true claims and facts, so the petitions to address political problems and political issues, misconducts, grievances, and it's meant to be you're meant to have more rights in doing it than anything else that you could possibly do, right? But they're even blocking that. And all you can write is like 2 paragraphs. All you can write is a title and 2 paragraphs, not even 50 words in each paragraph, I don't think, right? So if the government are so, it's so serious that they're not even letting you write 2 short paragraphs about it. Let's say like not even 100 words. That they're not even letting you put a short title and 2 short paragraphs about these things. They don't want you to share them. They don't want people to know about it, and they definitely don't want you collecting signatures on it. And that's how serious it is now. It's so serious that the government won't let you publish 2 paragraphs of writing that don't even have any links in there and get people to sign it. Because that's how serious it is, that you could say something in 2 paragraphs which could be so, it could have so much consequences on the government because but the only thing not allowed to do, they say not allowed to, you can't have any wrongdoing accusations in it. Well, why? How can I criticise the government then? How can I disagree with the government in what they say? How can I be critical and criticise the government, right? This is the thing. So the government now are suppressing with more veracity 2 paragraphs of writing as much as, or if not as more severely and strongly than they were suppressing the whole ideas and ideology of David Icke, even though that's all out there and people are talking about it. But, so what? Andrew Bridgen was a member of Parliament. He was in Parliament, and he was even stood in Parliament talking about these type of things that they don't want people talking about, and all the other MPs left, even though it's recorded in Hansard, even though it's recorded on video of Andrew Bridgen talking about these type of sort of things. Even then, Parliament are ignoring it, but obviously he was still an MP at the time. It's... Even though Andrew Bridgen was stood in Parliament and he's talking about things that they didn't really want him to talk about, it's almost like, when you hold the magnets together and they're pushing away from each other, and then when you let go, it just flips around and then sticks to the opposite side. Andrew Bridgen's in Parliament and he's repelling all of those MPs from him because he's on a subject that's got a lot of, magnetic force there, right? It was repelling them, right? It's kind of like that, and these things that we're putting now and trying to get published through the petitions, the official website, not this change.org and not this change.org and 38 Degrees websites, or doing it on paper when no one knows about it. We're talking about the right to raise awareness of something and collect signatures, and the right to share it and collect massive amounts of signatures in order to compel the government to act, right? They are repelling these petitions as much as, Andrew Bridgen, try to repel Andrew Bridgen out of the party. But the only thing is that they couldn't do anything about, now with YouTube and Facebook. They want YouTube and Facebook to be the future, but they want it to be sort of like how they want it to be, not with this one they've got to deal with, but they're having to deal with this now. It would help if somehow we could start getting some of the actual legislation, truth out there, like the actual facts of the truth and law, things that the government have been doing wrong, not just what they've been planning, because what they've been planning is a strategy, right? It's something that they've been, that is the, it's the consequential stratagem of all the things that they've been working towards, which they haven't confessed openly. It's a lot of consequential effects, like the consequential effects of the fast food industry, like the consequential effects of our health, right? And someone's been making a hell of a lot of money out of it. Someone knew what was going on, right? So, but at the moment, there are things that the government are doing that they actually aren't allowed to do, and that they've been doing illegal, like Nigel Farage and talking pints and things like that, and everyone's just ignoring it and carrying on or blanking it, right? But that's what they were doing with David Icke, right? When David Icke was, talking about this, kind of just like laughing at him or whatever. So maybe, these things might get addressed, but these particular things, you see, that type of thinking about this conspiracy theory and, way of thinking wasn't the type of thinking and thought that the TV wanted people to concentrate on and think about, right? They just wanted people to have fun and do basic entertainment. And the only intellectual pursuits that they wanted people to do, right, were TV game shows, like, which is mainly a memory game. It's like, here's an Encyclopedia Britannica, right? If you can remember everything from this book, and then when some game show host reels it off, if you can remember it all, then you win, right? It's not really what we call intellectual or critical thinking or problem solving. It's mainly what information do you know and what information can you remember, right? And that's not the type of thinking that this type of thing, like, Alex Jones is using and talking about, or David Icke. It's different. Now, the type of intelligence that I'm talking about, which is different from this general big picture thinking, what's going on in the big picture, what's the wider stratagem in the world that has been going on in the background, right? Well, what I'm thinking about, it's in the details. It's all in the details. It's in the details of the act of law, and it's in the details of, what YouTube and Facebook have been doing. And it's kind of like, what's going on Facebook is that all the MPs they're meant to have Parliament, and then they're meant to have their election campaigns, which is meant to be separate from Parliament. And what they've done is they want to have this social networking that merges their electoral campaigns with their Parliament business and work when they've been elected, and they want to use their parliamentary work and business to promote all their parties and their colleagues, but you're not allowed to do that. And what they've done is they've mashed it all up together, and people are distracted by entertainment and their strong political beliefs that at the moment they don't care, right? So these people are breaking the law, the MPs are breaking the law and acting criminally, but because A, everyone is distracted by entertainment, and B, everyone is really annoyed about these passionate political causes, the actual causes themselves, they don't actually care if Nigel Farage is breaking the law, right? Because people are so annoyed with Keir Starmer and panicking and frantic about what Labour are doing to the country that people just need to stop him. And reform is, Nigel Farage said, I'm going to stop him. But the thing is, Nigel Farage has broke the law and is a criminal as well. But people don't care. They're like, so what? We couldn't give a fuck. Even, we don't care if Nigel Farage is a criminal. We just need to get Keir Starmer out. And, Nigel Farage is going to do it, right? We don't care if Nigel Farage is breaking the law. But what's the point in having someone who's breaking the law when they're all breaking the law? This is the thing. And, some of these MPs, they can't even help themselves, some of them. They can't even do their own privileges law. It's not surprising that we aren't getting the law right for protests and all the riot laws and the privileges, because the MPs they can't even do it themselves. They're being misled, right, by their own parties and staff of Parliament. So there's a real lack of professionalism and understanding, which I don't think there was as much lack of professionalism and understanding in some of the earlier parliaments, like in the 1800s. But I actually think it's got worse. And I think it's kind of diet related and culture related, all these chat shows, and it's all opinion. And opinion is all right if you've got an opinion, but not to the point where you just ignore fact and truth and reality and law and totally disregard it purely on this chat show opinion, right? You can't run a government on like as if it's a chat show. Like, invite an MP on and have a chat like loose women, and then they'll decide, what's what. Because then this is what the parliamentary reports are becoming. The parliamentary reports are becoming like, Rees-Mogg's chat show, like, Rees-Mogg's opinion. It's like Rees-Mogg rewrites history, right? It's like Rees-Mogg rewrites history and leaves out half of the fucking facts and evidence, and then just like reframes it like he wants, like fucking Tacticus or something, right? And then everyone goes along with it and thinks that must be right just because he's Rees-Mogg, when what he's actually done is completely edited the truth and facts and totally bullshitted everyone like a charlatan, right? And this is what you got to call these people out on. So now it's actually about rather than the big picture and general strategy, now I think what the difficult part is doing is getting people to listen and focus and concentrate and get these villains, dealt with on a case by case basis on all the criminality that they've been doing, all the laws that they've been breaking and things like that, with talking pints. But at the moment, everyone, thinks GB News is the best thing since sliced bread. So it's very difficult to get GB News held to account when they're one of the main criminals, and it's all getting carried along in this wave of things happening, but it's almost kind of like flooding everywhere with political opinion and political kind of activity, but a lot of it's illegal, right? It probably was already a problem in the 80s, like, with spitting image and things like that. They were pushing the boundaries with it already then, but I would say that it's actually got really, really bad since 2005, since Facebook and YouTube. And Tony Blair government, with his number 10 Downing Street website. But I think they've been doing things like, sort of equivalent all the way through, different, things that are sketchy. But it's got actually ridiculous now. And at least, let's be honest, you see, in those old committee reports, in the 1973 committee reports, they're even saying, they're saying this is a complete waste of time, right? It's a charade. They're actually publishing in a parliamentary report, they're publishing what we're doing is a load of rubbish. It's actually tosh. It's pointless. We're misleading the public, and it's just it's a charade game and pointless. Now, how often do you get the government to say that? No, the equivalent, I think that is absolutely astounding. That committee report was written before I was born, right? And it was probably a lot harder to get those reports. I don't know where you would go to buy them, stationery office, but who knows about politics? Who was interested in politics in the early 70s? Someone on a politics course at university, Who would be interested in politics in the early 1970s? Someone who went to university studying politics, or a councillor, maybe someone who got elected onto the council, or someone who worked in the council, in the Democratic department. Not that many people, really. Either someone who worked in a council, maybe someone who was a member of a political party, but political parties already had their own policies and ideas, so why would you be doing petitions and get a petition committee report? Because, you just vote for the party and go to the party meetings and, the party leaders and MPs and councillors sort it all out, Maybe you might find those books and manuals if you go to a Labour club, or a Liberal club. They might have them there. I'm not sure, because that wasn't the type of thing that, the only thing that I saw in a Labour club was, people playing bowls and snooker and, smoke in the air and one-arm bandit machines, supposedly a Labour club, right? I don't know. So I don't know who would get hold of those books in your like university. They definitely wouldn't have them at high school, I don't think. So getting those books then at that point, but that it was significant that they published that. And then even in the 1944 report, right? One of the MPs was saying, "Oh yeah, we've been referring these petitions to government departments, and apparently we weren't supposed to do that. Oh, sorry about that, right?" The equivalent of what? The equivalent of that 1973 Petitions Committee report would be now, like, the local council saying, "Oh, public consultations are a charade. We're not going to act on them. It's just to make it look like, we give a fuck about what your opinion is, right? And to make it look like we're asking people what they think about it, right? Because we're going to fucking build a highway whether you want it or not, right? Because, it's $20 billion deal to fucking care transport, right? And, you've got a contract with the government, so, right, we've been planning it for the last 20 years, so don't think that, we're going to give you a consultation and then, if you don't want it, we're going to, stop, right? It's just tosh, we're just pretending like we're going to fucking build this highway, whether the hell, freezes over, right? We're going to redo fucking 24-hour bus lanes down your street, right? And you're getting all these G5 towers over our dead bodies, right? Because, we've done the deal, and, by the way, David Cameron's, dog's uncle's auntie owns the company, right? And they're making 20 billion out of it. So, that's happening, right? That you can't stop it from happening, right? We're building a new railway through wherever or whatever, and it's going to happen, right? There's nothing you can do to stop it happen. It's always like, you got the HS2 protests kicking off up and down the HS2 railway line. Can you remember when they were doing all that sort of thing? So, that's, really, that 1973 report in a way is funny because they were trying to rubbish the whole system and scrap it. But in doing that, they were admitting that the whole thing was a lot of, it was a waste of time, right? So it's, what are the chances of Keir Starmer saying, it's like Keir Starmer going on TV now, Trump went on there and he said, I don't like Sadiq Khan or whatever. Sadiq Khan is not a nice person, and he kept saying it, and Sadiq Khan kept getting wound up, right? But, it's like, would Keir Starmer go on TV now and say, "Oh yeah, the petitions committee, it's just a waste of time, it's a charade, it's like we rejected more than a quarter of the petitions and then hidden them so you can't see them. We're not even applying the policy properly, and then if you do get the signatures, we'll give you a lot of bullshit reply in the 10,000 signatures thing, and then if you get a debate, like your MPs, we're not going to go out of his way to get any evidence which proves your case for you. What do you think we're doing, like lawyers or something, right? It's like we're just going to come up with some tosh, like, oh, there's a lot of foreign interference, right? But just a minute, isn't the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, not meant to be a member of, like, Spectre, like in doing G40 cities? Is that, like, illegal? Is that not foreign interference? Because actually what the Mayor of London is doing is he's going to a foreign country, he's deciding what the future of England is going to be with a group of other countries and then implementing them into London Transport Scheme, right? Which, it's not an English, it's a foreign plan, right? That he's doing in England. But apparently, we're not supposed to be doing foreign plans in England. We're doing plans like what we come up with in England, right? What voters in England want and come up with, right? Not what, you don't vote a mayor of London in and then go do the plan that the Mexican president came up with, right? Because then you might as well have voted for the Mexican president to be the fucking mayor of London, right? So it's like, Have we elected a guy, Mayor of England, who's going to do what, the people who've elected him in England want him to do? Not what, fucking... It's like, you see, the really, right, what Sadiq Khan's doing really is highly illegal, because what he's actually doing is... If you vote for the Labour Party, they're only supposed to run Labour Party adverts in England, and it's meant to be an English political party, and it's meant to be for English voters to decide what happens to England, right? You can't have... Now, if that political party was like... its members who voted for the leader. Can you imagine, right? Put it this way, right? Let's say that, the Labour Party wasn't just an English political party, and let's say that it was like, America, Australia, and England, and Russia, right? And then let's say, like, it had members that you could join it if you were American, right? And then let's say that you had a party called Labour, right? And let's say that it consisted of, like, a million, 5 million American members, 5 million Australian members, and 5 million English members, right? And let's say they voted for the leader. And let's say they voted for Sadiq Khan to lead the party. But then that would mean that Australians voted for Sadiq Khan to be the leader of the party, right? And Australians... right? So he's not actually being voted to be leader of the party by English people, right? And then let's say that he gets elected into Parliament, and then the things that he puts through Parliament are what Americans wanted, right? Because they voted for him. But this is the thing. This is what Sadiq Khan is actually doing with his G40 City little group, because he's actually a member of this, like, Spectre, International Spectre group, right? Which is like doing these G40 cities or G30 cities, whatever they are, right? And they're all voting on what they're going to do, but then he gets into the Mayor of London spot and he's doing that thing, which is like a fucking foreign international Spectre thing, right? But it's not being voted by English people. All their plans and strategies are voted by this foreign ring group. So you might as well fucking have Sadiq Khan, might as well have been voted into the leader of, G40 party by half of fucking America. So it can't be legal what they're doing. It's not lawful, right? And then you've got, all these MPs in Michael Westwood's debate going on about always foreign interference, with the petition, like, fuck off, right? You know what I mean? Shut up. It's just insane. And really, these groups that Sadiq Khan's a member of, right? They actually are really the parties, because this is what, Keir Starmer's a member of. And so what they are, the proto-parties for how they really want to do this whole global digital culture. These are the proto-parties, like, even United Nations, right? Because this is what they want. They want it to be United Nations. They want it to be United Nations. This is what they tried with the EU, right? The European Union, which has totally gone head over heels, right? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get people together, like this sort of what we're doing with the EU, but with a international or global strategy with members, and they're trying to encourage them to do voting and stuff like that, like with the WEF and everything like that, and the WHO, and then that's what they're doing. But they're meeting, and they got members, and then they're deciding plans, but then they go to their own separate countries and implement them, right? But that's not our government. Our government's not G40 cities, right? Spectre. Our country is the Parliament of England, right? So, who fucking voted for these G40 G-city ideas, right? Now, if you say, oh, well, Sadiq Khan won the election in London, right? And he supports all those things, but it's like saying, oh, we voted for Keir Starmer because, look, right, there's loads of people trying to accusing Jeremy Corbyn of being a commie, right? If Jeremy Corbyn got voted in, and if he started implementing stuff through the government that was all Putin's idea, right, people won't be happy about it, right? You know? We're actually not actually electing people who are... You see, when you go to the polling station and vote, those voters have got control of the MP, really. Now, that if it's a majority Labour gets voted, then those voters in each area have meant to have control of the MP. Now, if all the Labour Party's plans and ideas are coming from the party members, the Labour Party... You know, this is like Jason Williamson, right? Jason Williamson got kicked out of the Labour Party, right? The Labour Party leader is meant to be voted on by the members of the party. And to be a member of the party, I thought you were supposed to be a British citizen, because if you're British citizens are voting for who the leader's going to be, and then the ideas coming up through the party are meant to become for the people who are members of it, right? And the people who are voting in the ballot box. That's supposed to be what Labour's about, channeling it upwards, right? Which is why Jeremy Corbyn's restarted with this sort of my party thing, right? But that's not how it's working, right? How it's working is Starmer's getting all the votes, right? And he's getting the seat. And he's getting voted in by all the people of Holborn and Pancras and Holborn, right? And then all the other Labour MPs are getting voted in from people who live in England and are registered to vote in England. But he's not doing everything that they say. What he's actually doing is going for a takeaway meal with fucking Sadiq Khan at G40 Cities, and he's bringing home ideas, law and policies, right? So what Starmer's doing is like going to a fucking... he's like going out for a takeout meal with Sadiq Khan to G40 Cities and coming back with like loads of fucking Mexican food and Mexican ideas and plans, and he's like, hey, you know, do you want a fucking takeout? You know, it's like takeout politics. And what he's doing is going around the Labour Party members and going, oh, do you want a chicken fried rice? Do you want a sweet and pork sour? Do you want a lemon chicken? You know, I've got this from Mexico. Why don't we have these plans in the British government? Why don't we have those plans in the British government? Like, just a minute. The ideas and policies from Labour are meant to come from the Labour voters up through the party to Starmer. But Starmer's fucking been... where the fuck is he with Sadiq Khan in some fucking takeout, bringing in foreign law? And then the Labour MPs have got the absolute cheeky balls to go into a fucking committee meeting on Michael Westwood's petition and say, oh, this petition's had foreign influences. What's that outside of your fucking mouth? Sticky toffee pudding. Sadiq Khan's fucking G40 City shit stuck around your chin. You know? Oh, look, you got something stuck on your face. Look, it's Sadiq Khan's lemon chicken stuck on the side of your face. Oh, you know, were you out having a fucking takeout meal with him last night from G40? You know? And then they say, oh, well, the petition's been shared by Americans. You know, they shared it and helped you get signatures. You know, how dare they help? How dare they help, you know, get signatures, get British people to get signatures, right? No, it's foreign influence, you know? And then Sadiq Khan pukes up on the table. What's all that Mexican food, Sadiq? Where did you get all that from? You know, all over the fucking table, all over the meeting table. There's some foreign influence in there, look. There's an olive. You know, where the fuck did you get that olive from? This is the thing. I really don't know how Starmer and Khan can dare to say that all the petitions have had foreign influence, right? When they're pushing all these takeout policies, you know, on the voters, but they're not from the voters. They're not like originating in the minds and heads of the voters and going into the Labour Party voting. Sadiq Khan, right? Everyone's sat at the table talking about politics, and then Sadiq Khan just walks in and chucks a fucking box of fried rice on there. Hey, why don't we do this? And everyone's like, that's what it's like on The Lost Boys, isn't it? You know, how can 1,000 Chinese people be wrong? You know, it's like a fucking buried, it's like on The Lost Boys when there's a fucking take out place in the caves. You know what? This is the thing. They're actually. It's not actually. We're getting foreign influences. If you read that House of Lords debate on election propaganda, it talks about this in great detail. In fact, they say that it needs to be gone into even more. It says that they're only scratching the surface of the problems, right, which can arise. And we're actually, that's what's happening now through Facebook and YouTube, because we're getting a lot of foreign influences and effects on our politics, which is actually meant to be illegal. And, this is what the whole 1700 Act of Settlement is about as well. So it's like other countries are deciding what our law's going to be, not the actual political party members. And that's actually even when they're doing it lawfully, when they're not. This is the thing, it's not lawful, it can't be lawful. I don't know how they managed to set up these groups, right, all these G40 city groups and so forth, but it can't be lawful. Facebook is not legal. You can't use it for adverts. It's using foreign equipment and servers and laws, imposing, extending over into English law, overreaching, right? And I'm certain that because I know that it's illegal and they shouldn't have been doing it, and it's, the Electoral Commission aren't going to do anything about it, right? I know that these G40 city plans can't be lawful, because what they're doing is he's overriding the Labour Party. What he's doing, the Labour Party of British voters is being infiltrated by take-out foreign policies have been inserted into it, right? So I don't even look, right? If you're a member of the EU, right, you go to the EU to represent England. What does England think? It's like the fucking Eurovision Song Contest, right? We send someone to the EU to tell the EU what England thinks, right? What the English people think. That's what Farage used to do, right? And that Irish woman. And then they come back to England, right? Now, what Sadiq Khan's doing is he's coming from his G50 cities and bringing politics in to the Labour Party room and putting it on the fucking table and saying, hey, we're going to do this. But just a minute, does that mean that the other country, we're doing what the other country's telling us to do, right? Not what the people who vote for in the polling stations want in England, right? And this is the thing. It's take-out politics. He's bringing take-away politics in, right? And it's actually not lawful, because this is what that election propaganda thing says, that you're not allowed to have the elections influenced by other foreign countries, but they are being doing. This is the thing. I don't think that G40 city whole thing can be lawful. It can't be. And even the United Nations are not supposed to get involved in, polling stations and voters. It's meant to be like a government strategy for government. It's not meant to be to get them into government. There's definitely something illegal about it. But I haven't got time to focus on that, because I'm working on the whole rights and privileges thing. And that's what I'm specialising in. So I don't know anything about this whole, the whole Extinction Rebellion argument and, net zero and all this type of stuff, because it's not my thing. But I know it's not actually the policy part of it. It's how it's being done. It's like, it's not what they're doing, it's how they're doing it, right? So Extinction Rebellion and everyone is focusing on what are they doing, what are they wanting to do. I'm talking about how they're doing it, how it is being done, which can't be lawful. It's how they're doing it. It's like, how did Nick Clegg get elected in Parliament and keep so popular? Because he was having his radio show, right? And he was getting an advantage right? But no one knew what the election law was, and no one can afford £5,000 to prosecute the cunt, right? But then he ends up as Deputy Prime Minister. Oh, I'm a Lib Dem, right? And now I'm the global president of Facebook. Hey, the exact platform that's been illegally helping MPs. Oh, look, and I was the MP for Hallam, and look, here's Lord Allen of Hallam. That rhymes. I was the MP for Hallam, and here is Lord Allen of Hallam, and he was in charge of Facebook as well, and now I am the new Supreme President of Facebook. There's a mystery to solve. And guess what? Now he's in charge of Ofcom. Yes, Ofcom. What are the chances of that? There's all this illegal implementation going on. And now the Parliament website are advertising Facebook and YouTube to everyone after the BBC told everyone to go join Facebook, right? It's like, hey, here's a phone number, 0624 377 897. Give me a call anytime. Hey, what's that on? Well, it's the telephone. What? Ring me on the telephone. Oh, what's that? It's like it's a phone. Other brands are available of the telephone. It's the computer. Why don't you contact me on the computer? Oh yes, I will. I'll contact you on send me a message on the computer. All right, cool. What computer? Well, your computer, any computer. Just send me a message. Oh, just a minute. I'll have to explain it in a little bit more detail. Why don't you send me a Yahoo message? Other brands are available. Why don't you send me a Hotmail message? Other brands are available. And send me a Google Mail message. Why don't you send me a @bt@me.com or whatever message, right? Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're starting to get the branding in the actual, it's not just like a number, it's like, oh, is that a BT phone? Well, why so interested, Why don't you give me a call? My number's, 2222222722222, right? Give me a call anytime. Well, what phone company you on? Why do you need to know what phone company I'm on? It's like, hey, now you contact your MP on Blue Sky, X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever, right? This is a thing. It's like, look, other brands are available, but, these are our choice mushrooms. Look, it's Merlin Sheldrake, our choice shroom, right? It's like, oh, look, here's our pick of the bunch. It's like, no wonder all these other, platforms aren't being successful and there are 100 different search engines trying to make it, in business. How did Sergey Brin suddenly get so popular and take over the world, Why aren't there, apparently in this modern day and age, right, it's never been as creative. Apparently there's never been as much creative diversity, But, so, it blows my mind that there's never been as many music artists ever. In fact, there's so many music artists now that anyone can be a music artist, right? It's not like there's only Elton John or the Beatles or Cliff Richard or whatever, Top of the Pops, right? And you go on Bandcamp, who hasn't written an album, who hasn't done songs, right? Everyone's doing it, but just notice, why is it so peculiar that everyone hasn't got a search engine, right? Or everyone has got a social media platform like Mark Zuckerberg. Don't you think that's strange? There's never been as many people making music. There's never been as many people making movies and films. Why are they making them all on YouTube? Someone, the government, or maybe it's even Sergey Brin, because he's got control of all the search engines, right? He stamped out all his. Can you imagine, right? If the Beatles would have, they wouldn't. What if there was no more music? What happens if? Can you imagine if the Beatles would have been the only band? And there weren't, no Rolling Stones, and there weren't any of the Animals, and there weren't any other music bands. It was just the Beatles. It's like, hey, are you going to listen to some music? Yeah, what music do you want to listen to? And then. There was only the Beatles albums. That's it. But don't you? That's the weird thing. How come there's really only Mark Zuckerberg? And then not only just the fact that there's Mark Zuckerberg, he's also got Facebook and Threads and Instagram. There's not only the three, but they're all his, right? And it's just, I cannot believe how they managed to contain and control it and get everyone onto these ones and no other ones. So they can't, and you know why that is? Because what if these other platforms have had different policies and, you know, and so forth, and then they wouldn't have been able to try get everyone into obeying and complying with the policies, the same type of policies that you use on e-petitions, by the way, although e-petitions is like maybe the most, you've never had as many rights in any law or country in the whole world as using petitions, but it's got the most stringent and tight policy that even puts these platforms type policies to shame, right? And it's all tied into listening to your information, watching your information, getting access to your information, and digital ID, the idea for it, and then implementing it into the government. Now all MPs have got it on the website, you know, they're featuring these websites and encouraging you to use them, and now they're implementing it into the, you know, if you've got a business, you've got to register with the government ID card and so forth, and now they're suggesting these companies that, you know, that Nick Clegg was in charge of, but yet, you know, they pretended that, oh, no, we can't keep up with this technology. But no, we can't keep up with the technology because we're wanting to implement it and you to use it, you know. If we admitted that, you know, it was illegal and we're not supposed to be using it, then we wouldn't have been able to, you know, advertise it on our MP's page, right? So none of the elections since 2005 can be valid. They can't be. None of those elections since 2005 can be valid because all the MPs started breaking the law, breaking the election rules. So how can any other legislation which has been put through since 2005 be taken seriously? How can it be? You know, this is effectively what, you know, this is what Danny Kruger MP was saying, you know, like we need to be like, you know, undoing more laws than they're making. But I'm serious about that. They actually need to be undoing more laws than they're making because I don't think they're making them lawfully. But anyway, there's so many things that the government are doing wrong at the moment, right? And these, so maybe it's just the fact that, you know, it like, you know, it's been bottled, it's been held back, it's been kept out of the TV and off the TV for so long. I guess these guys are having enjoyment getting to talk about it for a change. So I guess you can't really expect too much. But the problem is that all the things they're talking about, which they want to try and stop the government from doing, what I'm talking about is, yeah, well, how can you do it? Is because, like, you've got to say, you know, they're blocking us from doing it. And to stop them blocking us from doing it, you have to say that, you know, they're illegally blocking us and illegally stopping us from doing it, which they are. And in order to prove that, you need the facts and truth and people to know about it. And in order for me to do that, I need to put it in the petition and share it to them, right? And get the signatures on there to force the government to stop doing it illegally, right? But the government won't let me publish it. And so we're back to the stage which we're at with David Icke on with Terry Wogan, right? Where he just, you know, he laughed at him and they try to keep him off TV. So it's like now... So it's yet another stage, another layer of peeling back the bullshit, you know, peeling back the facade. And now they've sort of like cracked open the shell on the big picture. Now what they need to focus on is getting their facts and details right. So, like, you know, when all these protesters are getting prosecuted, well, then we need to get the facts right on the law, right? The facts right on the legislation. But no one's sort of doing that because everyone is kind of like just like sort of going like fucking like, you know, just sort of tearing at it like all crazed and can't concentrate and focus on it, which they need to do. You know, can you imagine if, you know, people are singing this like Keir Starmer's a wanker sort of song? Can you imagine instead if they were singing, you know, the right to petition, which is like the suffragettes used to have on the badge, right? That would be something. Or if they were reading out, you know, some of these laws and legislation, like in the Criminal Damage Act, you know, in the lawful excuse. What if they had a song like, we have a lawful excuse, you know, we have a lawful excuse, you know, that would be a great song, you know, because if the police are there right? And these protesters were singing like, "We have a lawful excuse." A lawful excuse, and you're giving us abuse. We have a lawful excuse. It's an excuse, and you're giving us abuse. They'll sing that at the police. That would be a mind bender for the police. So if the whole crowds were singing lawful excuse, excuse, we have an excuse. There's no excuse for your abuse. We have a lawful excuse, an excuse. There's no reason for your abuse. That would crack the police. I like that Extinction Rebellion. Insulate Britain woman who looks like the guy from The Bill. But she's a woman. Like, she's got the same hair. She's sort of like she's almost like the female version of the main chief officer from The Bill, like the famous guy who's on the thing, and she's getting carried off, and it's like a psycho crusher, because like the police are seeing. When you look at it, it looks like it's the chief officer from The Bill getting taken away. They're coming to take me away. Ha ha. Hoo 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 hoo. It's like a psycho. It's like, I love that because it's just like it looks like the police chief officer's getting carried away, right? Carried off. Like actually getting some action against the police. So it's like whenever I see that, it's like the psycho crusher. But if everyone started singing, we've got a lawful excuse, there's no excuse for your abuse, like at the police, that really would be a psycho crusher. Because apparently the police's morale's been broken at the moment, and some of them are leaving. But like, if they sung that instead of like, Keir Starmer's a wanker, because of the Seven Nations Army. You want to throw some decent songs into there like that, because then you can do things and you can get your point across, the legal points across. So we sort of need some songs which sort of get the legal points across, I guess. And that's just an example of many you could have, right? Like, we've got an excuse, but there's no excuse for your abuse. Like that or something. That's the type of thing now that we kind of need. Like, there's sort of, I suppose, there's Tommy Robinson sort of things and that, just to get the police to back off a bit. That would be a Psycho Crusher song. I have actually never seen the police coming out with any songs yet. Apparently not allowed to sing on duty. But that would be a beauty. That we've got a lawful excuse, but you are giving us abuse. We've got a lawful excuse, but you're giving us abuse.